The wind rolled low through the Nebraska cornfields, rustling gold-green stalks, like a lullaby meant only for the land. Morning light bathed the earth in butter and brass, and the smell of tilled soil lingered under the call of a distant crow. Jack Harrow stood at the edge of his field, one hand resting on a shovel, the other holding a chipped enamel mug filled with black coffee strong enough to float nails. His flannel sleeves were rolled to the elbow, sunburnt skin crisscrossed with the kind of scars that didn't come from farming. His overalls were faded, boots crusted with dirt, and his eyes, those calm, polite eyes, took in the horizon like a man who saw further than it looked. His dog Benny, some mix of retriever and mutt, lay sprawled in the dust beside the porch, ears twitching now and then at crows or memory. Jack took a sip of coffee. "Smells like rain might visit by Thursday," he murmured. The corn said nothing. The wind moved slow, and then it changed. A whine, faint and rising, cut the sky like a straight razor through silk. Birds exploded from the trees. Benny stood, ears flat, tail low. Jack set his mug on the porch rail. "No hurry." He tapped the shovel once against his boot, then leaned it beside the door. The sky above shimmered, warped, then bloomed with colorless fire. A ship, sleek, silver, humming like hornets caught in prayer, descended with imperial pride straight into the center of his southern cornfield. 3 stalks caught fire. Jack sighed. The craft settled with a hiss. Vents opened. The dirt trembled. A ramp slid down with the arrogance of royalty. Out stepped something tall, armored in glinting bone metal, walking like a man who had never once known hunger or fear. Behind him, 2 more followed, one with a scanning rod, another carrying what looked like a ceremonial staff crossed with a plasma cannon. Jack folded his arms. "Gonna flatten more corn, or is that your way of saying good morning?" The lead alien blinked. His translator unit struggled, then spat out something close to English. "You, human, surrender. Your soil is now Zalari Dominion." Jack looked to Benny, then to the scorched edge of his field. That corn was near harvest. The second alien pointed the rod at him, scanned. Age 50. Profession, agriculture. Threat level, minimal. The third alien chuckled, a gurgling, synthetic noise. Primitive. Jack shifted his weight, boots crunching gravel. "You boys from California?" The lead one stepped forward. "You are irrelevant. We claim this sector. Comply or be removed." Jack ran a thumb along the edge of his jaw. "You got names? Or just ranks and egos?" No answer. The alien with the staff raised it. A blue light formed at the tip. They fired, not at Jack, but at the scarecrow behind him. It burst into ash, coat buttons spinning like confetti. Jack didn't flinch, but something in his posture adjusted. "You shot Walter," he said softly. The leader laughed. Symbolic. Intimidation. Jack nodded once. "Right. Well." He walked to the barn. Calm. No rush. Benny followed, ears pinned. The aliens turned to each other. He retreats. Inside, the barn was shadow and sawdust. Jack stepped past hay bales, past a rusted tractor and 2 retired saddles. He knelt beside a tool chest, pulled up a false bottom, and lifted out something wrapped in an oilcloth. Outside, the aliens waited, impatient. He returned carrying a hoe in one hand and a coil of thick wire in the other. They laughed again. Jack didn't. The first moved toward him, confident, fast. Jack flung the wire. It caught the alien's legs, pulling tight with a snap. The creature stumbled. Jack moved like a man whose body remembered things his soul tried to forget. He planted the hoe into the alien's neck, just under the helmet rim. One down. The second fired. Jack ducked, scooped dirt into the alien sensors, then jammed the scanning rod into its gut and kicked it sideways. The third tried to run. Jack tackled him before he hit the ramp, disarmed him with a twist, and used the ceremonial staff to pin him to the ground. "You stepped on my crop," Jack whispered, nose inches from the creature's visor. The alien blinked. What are you?" Jack stood slowly, looked to the smoking scarecrow. "Just a farmer." He dragged the ship to the edge of the property, using Benny's collar looped around the steering yoke. buried it under tarps and brush, deep in the western grove. Then he went back to the porch, picked up his mug. Coffee was cold. He sipped anyway. Evening fell with a crimson hush. Jack stood by the fence, watching the stars blink into view. One star moved, too fast for natural, too slow for anything local. "They'll come lookin'," he said aloud. Benny barked once, low and soft. Jack walked into the house, through the kitchen, down the stairs. The cellar was dark. He pulled the chain light. A bulb flickered to life, throwing long shadows across canning jars and shelves of old books. In the corner was a chest, locked in rusted iron. He knelt, turned the key. The lid creaked open. Inside, a set of matte black gloves, a belt with 6 empty sheaths, and a datapad blinking red for the first time in 15 years. His hand hovered over it, then settled. The screen flared. Project Yaga, status, reactivated. Jack exhaled slow, like an old man unburying his younger sins. A piece of the ceiling creaked. Benny waited at the stairs, not barking now, just watching. Jack looked up at the dark above him, past the dust, past the land he'd tried to make peaceful. "You tried," he muttered. "You really did." The screen blinked again. A soft ping. "Incoming transmission. Galactic Zolari Command." Jack rose. The final shot lingered on the glowing screen, the farmer's calloused hand gripping the hilt of something ancient and terrible, something that should have stayed buried under corn and regret. Outside, the wind picked up, and far above Earth, the strongest empire in the galaxy logged a simple error in their invasion report. Engaged single human farmer. Awaiting reinforcements. Subject designation unknown. They would learn the name soon, and they would wish they never had. In orbit above Earth, aboard the Zolari Ascendancy's fleet cruiser Glory of Domination, the mood was celebratory. Champagne-colored lights bathed the bridge in artificial warmth, and the Empire's banner, twin serpent birds entwined in gold, fluttered in a sealed wind chamber. A victory reel played silently on a side panel, past conquests, bent knees, and shattered moons. General Xarn of House Kulaz reclined in his observation throne, eyes narrowed, one claw tracing the edge of a goblet filled with some earth-converted liquid he still found sticky and offensive. The human planet was deemed a Category 3 conquest, low resistance, amusing culture, and passable terrain for expansion. "We've already dispatched ground teams to the other side of the planet," reported Sub-Officer Trin, her voice smooth cold. "No resistance. The only anomaly remains that farm." Xarn lifted a brow ridge. "The one that sent back 30 body bags?" Trin flinched. "No bodies, sir. No signal. No return. Only silence." Silence in Zolari Command was a swear word. Xarn scoffed. "Let me see this, farmer." On a center display, a paused frame showed Jack Harrow walking toward a barn, wearing flannel and mud-stained boots, a dog at his side, the very picture of an irrelevant species. Xarn sneered. "This is the apex predator Earth offers? A man dressed like a church janitor." Another officer muttered. He moved fast. Records suggest kinetic bursts exceeding human norms. "Enough," Xarn snapped. "Send in the Praetorian order." A silence, deeper than vacuum, fell. Someone coughed. "The entire Praetorian order." Trin echoed, blinking hard. Xarn smiled, sipping from his goblet. "Let's show Earth what a real empire looks like when it's not feeling merciful." Down below, as twilight faded into cold prairie dusk, Jack Harrow was fixing a hinge on his barn door. Benny lay curled in the grass, watching the sky with a solemnity only dogs understood. Jack worked quietly, pausing only to pull a wrench from his back pocket and test the tension with calloused fingers. Then the wind changed again, sharp, metallic. The stars above folded like paper, and a rift opened, silent, smooth. A hole in reality, stitched by Zolari tech. Outpoured 32 figures clad in obsidian armor, plates etched with runes older than Earth's pyramids. Their helmets glowed with red slits, and their weapons pulsed with the steady hum of death waiting for orders. They landed with military grace, forming a perimeter. Jack stood, wiping his hands on a towel, expression unreadable. He looked down at Benny, who had not moved. "Well," he said, "seems company's back." One stepped forward, taller than the rest, carrying a plasma axe nearly his own height. Jack Arrow. The voice echoed from an external amplifier. Surrender. You are trespassing on now conquered territory of the Zalari Ascendancy. Jack tilted his head. You brought a whole ballet troupe just for little Oelmi? The warrior bristled. You killed an advance team. Jack raised a hand, politely. That ain't true. Some of them tripped. Couple slipped. One might have hugged my shovel too hard. Another warrior stepped forward, visibly annoyed. Do you mock the order? Jack placed a towel over his shoulder. Oh, sugar, you're new to Earth, ain't you? The commander barked a word in Zalari, and the troops advanced. Jack walked to the barn. They followed, scanning his movements, reading him as nothing more than a fleshy target with no exosuit, no ship, no apparent weapons. Inside the barn, Jack closed the doors behind him. 30 seconds passed. Then the world erupted. The barn doors blew off their hinges, followed by one of the armored warriors tumbling through the air, smashing into a trough. Another was flung backwards by an automated hayloader modified to launch compressed oxygen blades. Screams, some in Zalari, some in no known language, rang out. From inside the barn came the unmistakable sound of a man whistling Yankee Doodle, while chainsaws buzzed. One Praetorian activated his shoulder cannon. He didn't get to fire it. Jack Arrow, smiling, walked through a wall of hay with a grain-augmented kinetic shield, a piece of tech no Zalari had ever seen, and hurled a pitchfork like a javelin. It impaled the cannon wielder through 3 layers of armor and pinned him to a post. Sorry about the mess, Jack said, cracking his neck. Should have called ahead. In orbit, chaos reigned. Trin shouted across the bridge. We're losing telemetry. Something scrambling visuals, like static, but alive. Xarn rose from his throne. What kind of planet is this? He growled. An officer whispered, Sir, I think we poked a bear in church clothes. Back on Earth, only 6 Zalari warriors remained standing, breathing hard, armor dented and cracked, facing a man with blood on his boots and a calmness that came not from arrogance, but experience. Jack adjusted his sleeves. I don't want to kill the rest of y'all. They hesitated. Because if I do, he said, stepping forward, I'll have to dig 32 holes, and my shovel's already tired. They broke. 2 ran. For dropped weapons. Jack nodded approvingly. Then he walked past them back into the open field and sat on a log near the fence line. Benny padded over, tail wagging faintly. Jack pulled a flask from his coat. Figured I'd earned a sip. He poured a little on the ground. For Walter. A low whine hummed overhead. Not a ship. A satellite. Zalari origin. Broadcasting open frequencies. Projecting a simple phrase into the Earth's atmosphere in 5,000 languages. Who are you? Jack looked up, then tapped a small device clipped under his collar. Dormant until now. It blinked green. Didn't want to do this, he muttered. But y'all clearly need a reminder. The sky above the Midwest blinked. 6 high-orbit drones, silent, stealth class, made in underground labs the world forgot, activated in sequence. They intercepted the signal, then beamed a response encoded in ancient Russian cipher protocols. The Zalari bridge went dark. Xarn's goblet hit the floor, red liquid pooling like blood at his boots. On screen, a video began playing. Black and white footage. Grainy. Blurry. One man walking through a field of fire. Bodies behind him. No armor. No team. Just hands and silence. He moved with purpose and something worse. Calm certainty. Subject 23, hey, whispered an old Zalari record keeper. Codename Yaga. Last confirmed sighting 40 years ago. Thought to be dead. Xarn stared at the footage. Then at the image of Jack Arrow, now standing by his dog, staring up at the stars. Get me the Emperor, he hissed. Below, Jack walked into town, dust trailing behind him like ghost smoke. Main Street looked the same as it had for 50 years, 2-story buildings, dusty windows, and the faint music of a guitar from Lou's saloon. The sheriff was sweeping his porch. He looked up as Jack passed. That looks back in your eye, Jack. Jack paused. They pushed too far. The sheriff leaned on his broom. You said you were done. I was. He stepped off the sidewalk and headed toward the hardware store. In the back room, behind planks of lumber and a jar of old nails, was a door no one ever opened. He reached for the handle. Behind him, the wind whispered. Benny growled. Jack turned slowly. A child stood there, no more than 17, eyes wide, shaking. My dad, they took him. Said we belong to them now. Said the land does. Jack's jaw set. Where? South Ridge. Near the creek. Jack looked up at the sky. Guess they forgot one thing. What's that? The boy asked. Jack's eyes narrowed. Voice low. Final. This ain't their land. He pushed the door open. The room beyond glowed blue, humming with weapons the world never saw. Not because they were hidden, but because Earth had never needed to use them. Until now. He stepped inside. The wind slammed the door behind him. And somewhere far above, the Emperor of the Zolari watched the footage on loop. The farmer, the barn, the axe made of plow blades, and the final word on the data feed, blinking in pale red text. He's awake. The night had gone still again, but it was not peace, it was recoil. A breath drawn inward before the scream. Jack Harrow stood barefoot in the glow of a humming forge buried beneath his barn. The secret armory had once been a myth, even to the Black Ops brass who built it. Steel tables lined the walls, some dust-covered, others laid out like a dinner spread for war. On one wall, an ancient mower sat silent, its handlebars rusted, the blades dulled by time. But inside its frame, buried where no farmer would ever need to look, was the old man's original kill switch. Jack stared at it for a long time, a wrench in hand, a part of him hoping it might not fit anymore. It did. With a low click, the mower shivered to life. Not the blades. No, those were cover. What purred alive was something else. An internal reactor the size of a lunchbox, stolen from a downed alien probe when Jack was younger, wilder, less regretful. He leaned back against the bench, sweat beading on his temples. The room smelled like oil and ozone, like guilt and readiness. He remembered her voice. You promised to stop. I tried, he muttered to no one. Above him, the ground rumbled, not with thunder, but with incoming dread. A siren whined from a dusty corner monitor. Benny barked once, short and clipped. On screen, a massive Zolari vessel breached atmosphere near the southern creeks. It wasn't a scouting ship. It was a warhammer. Jack wiped his hands. So, they're done playing. He moved across the room and opened another case, an old metal crate stamped with 7 warnings in 4 languages. Inside, a suit of flexible armor that looked like denim but could stop antimatter. He slipped it on like an old skin. It knew his weight. It forgave the years. One last thing. He reached into a hidden compartment beneath the workbench. His fingers trembled, not from fear, but memory. Out came a battered ID badge with a cracked photo. Name, Harrow Jack. Clearance, Orion Black. Status, retired, NO inactive, do not engage. Jack clipped it to his vest. Outside, dawn tried to break the sky, but the light was bruised. Meanwhile, 10 miles out, nestled in a bend of the creek, the Zolari Praetor General Vazek surveyed his troops as they constructed a forward base. He towered over most of them, 8 feet of muscle and pride, a scar cutting across his left cheek like a medal earned in fire. He did not underestimate this farmer. No, not anymore. He'd read the reports, dug through decrypted Earth archives. Human records were cluttered with entertainment, most of it fiction, but some entries were tagged confidential, and those held darker truths. One file had no name, just grainy footage and a moniker given by Earth's enemies, Yaga. Vazek narrowed his eyes. The field was still, too still. He turned to his second-in-command. Deploy sensor mines. I want 1,000-meter radius sterilized. The alien nodded, but didn't move fast enough. A whistling sound cut through the air. Then a crack. And then fire. Not fire like plasma. This was rural fire. Crude and brutal and clever. The kind that came wrapped in tractor shells and homemade missiles forged from pressure tanks and rusted bolts. Half the encampment vanished in smoke and screams. Jack Harrow walked out of the tree line calmly, holding a rifle that looked older than the war he retired from. He didn't raise it yet, just spoke. "Thought you boys might like some morning heat." Vazek stepped forward, unshaken. "You're not human," he said. Jack smirked. "No, I'm worse. I'm American." He fired once. Not at Vazek, at the ground beneath him. The shot hit a hidden capacitor mine Jack had planted last summer, just in case raccoons got ambitious. The blast knocked the general off his feet. The camp turned to chaos. Jack vanished into smoke. He moved like shadow, striking from angles that defied logic. He used irrigation ditches as cover, ducked under their tech sensors, and marked targets with wheat stalks dipped in scentless oil, so his dog would know who to bite later. He took one down with a pitchfork he'd sharpened for pigs. Another fell to a spring trap rigged from a cowbell and sharpened trowels. By the time the Zalari regrouped, they were down 20 men. Jack stood atop a hill. "You came to take Earth," he called out. "But Earth ain't a thing. It's people. And some of us are just real hard to dig out." Vazek rose, armor scorched, eyes burning. "You're a relic," he spat. "One man doesn't stop an empire." Jack nodded. "Exactly." From behind the hills, thunder rumbled. Not real thunder. Wheels. Steel. And beneath that, power. 4 old farm trucks rumbled over the ridge, each retrofitted with pulse rifles, camo netting, and barrels full of improvised death. Inside them, Jack's old unit. Men and women with gray in their hair and blood on their boots. Farmers. Teachers. Mechanics. But once killers. Vazek stared. "You had a team?" Jack shrugged. "Nah. I had neighbors." The ambush began. The Zalari fought back, but they weren't ready for human spite forged by years of taxes, blisters, and unresolved childhood trauma. One woman screamed while driving a combine straight through the enemy's perimeter, flinging blades and Bible verses in equal measure. A young girl, barely 15, disabled a Zalari mech with a slingshot loaded with ball bearings dipped in corrosive cleaner. They weren't soldiers. They were earthlings. Vazek watched it crumble, watched his own blood drip from a cracked gauntlet. He activated emergency extraction. The last ship descended, but as he boarded it, he looked back one last time. Jack stood at the edge of the battlefield, rifle lowered, eyes level. "Why?" Vazek asked, breath ragged. "Why fight so hard for dirt?" Jack didn't blink. "Because it's ours." The ship fled skyward, trailing smoke. Jack exhaled. The adrenaline faded. He dropped to one knee. Not in pain, but memory. His body remembered the cost. His soul counted higher. A soft hand touched his shoulder. It was the neighbor girl, the one whose father had been taken. She looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes. "I didn't know you were like this." Jack swallowed. "I ain't. Not unless I have to be." She handed him a medal, a sheriff's badge she'd found in the wreckage. Bent. Scorched. Still shining. Jack took it, closed his fingers around it. From orbit, the surviving Zalari fleet scrambled. Panic spread like smoke in a dry house. The Emperor himself received a direct message from Earth's atmosphere. A short video. A single frame. Jack Harrow sitting on a lawn chair, sipping lemonade. His dog asleep beside him. Behind them, a burning Zalari banner stuck into a hay bale. Caption read, "Don't come back." The Emperor stared in silence. And, in the deepest part of his gut, something primal stirred. For the first time in 3 millennia, he felt fear. Back on Earth, Jack watched the sun set from his porch, the world quiet again. He pet Benny's head. "She said I was a monster," he murmured. "Maybe I am." The dog didn't reply, just leaned against him. Jack looked out at the field, at the mower, still humming, still waiting. He whispered, to no one in particular, "I buried him, you know. The man I used to be, deep as I could." Then his eyes narrowed, catching a glint of silver on the northern sky. It was small, distant, but moving. Too fast. Too deliberate. He stood slowly, voice low. "And here they come with a shovel." There was a silence only space could carry. It wasn't just the absence of noise. It was the quiet held before judgment. Above Earth, the Zalari Ascendancy's high fleet formed a burning arc across low orbit, ships aligned like teeth of a closing maw. Inside the Zalari High Command flagship Divine, well, the Emperor watched Earth through an observation dome the size of a cathedral. His ceremonial robe shimmered like mercury, cascading over shoulders hunched with unease. His name had never been spoken in defeat, and yet the face on the screen haunted him. A human, sitting in a rocking chair, a dog curled at his feet. The man didn't even look at the camera. He just poured lemonade and scratched behind the mutt's ear, as if nothing about galactic war concerned him. The Emperor spoke, his voice a deep harmonic. Are we certain this, Jack Harrow, is not a collective myth? A fabrication to instill fear? Admiral Luxor stepped forward, a datapad trembling slightly in his grip. Your Majesty, this footage was collected post-conflict. Harrow neutralized an elite regiment with handcrafted weapons. Drones confirmed the remains. The Emperor narrowed his eyes. He used a plow blade. Luxor nodded. And you sent how many warriors? 7,000. With reinforced shield tanks and orbital artillery. And Luxor paused. No survivors. The Emperor's fingers curled. Then what remains to be done? Total planetary cleanse, Majesty. We deploy the solar lance. Vaporize the biosphere. Render the surface inert. The Emperor stared out the dome again. The Earth hung there, blue and passive. A hammer will shatter it, but a mirror may show us our face. The words echoed oddly in the chamber. Prepare the lance, he said finally. But open a channel to Harrow. I want to know what kind of monster buries gods in soil. On Earth, in a chapel quiet control bunker beneath the Nebraska hills, Jack Harrow stood over a console humming with old secrets and new light. Next to him, Clara Joyner, former recon tech, now wheat farmer, tapped the transmitter with one boot on the desk. Signal acquired, she muttered. We're in their teeth now. Jack didn't blink. Good. Time they bit down. Clara glanced at him. You really think this'll work? He looked up, eyes calm. They brought the biggest fleet in their empire to squash one farmer. That means they're afraid. Fear makes people dumb. And angry. Even better. Clara stepped back. Jack toggled the console. The screen came alive with alien light. Open broadcast, he said. All Zalari channels. There was a pause. Then static, then image. The Emperor's face appeared, a lattice of bone and regal design, cold eyes like stars gone dead. You are Jack Harrow, he said. I am. Why do you resist? Jack smiled faintly. 'Cause I've got land, and you ain't invited. The Emperor's brow twitched. You are alone. No. I'm just first. Behind him, silent doors opened. Operators filed into the room, human, all. Some scarred, some young, some weathered from sun or war or both. Farmers, teachers, former janitors. One man still wore an apron. Another had clay under his fingernails. All of them trained. All of them ready. The Emperor's jaw set. Earth has no interstellar fleet. Jack nodded. Never needed one. We're not conquerors. We're defenders. Then you will burn. No, Jack said, voice level. You will. He clicked the second switch. Above Earth, the Zalari solar lance, a towering orbital construct the size of an asteroid, finished charging. Its core pulsed with captured suns, built to melt continents, in one sustained beam. And then it shut down. Lights dimmed. Rotors stopped. A deep power down hissed through the fleet like breath leaving a body. On every Zalari vessel, screens scrambled. Guidance failed. Thrusters lost calibration. Status, the Emperor snapped. Luxor paled. Our systems, they're offline. Manual override unresponsive. Backup drives inert. What did he do? The Emperor hissed. Earth's signal returned. Jack sipped lemonade. Funny thing about being underestimated, he said, is no one ever checks your dirt. The Emperor's face twisted. Explain. We've been burying stuff in our soil for decades. Tech nodes. Weapons. Wires so deep even our own satellites don't know they're there. Clara leaned into frame. You remember Roswell? That was a jump start. Jack chuckled. We didn't just learn from your tech. We planted it back in your systems. Every ship, every drone, every crystal circuit you built in orbit last year, we corrupted from the ground up. You gave us time. We gave you rope. The Emperor blinked. You set a trap. Jack smiled. We were the trap. And then he stood. Now let me show you what that means. He pressed the final switch. High above Earth, dozens of dark forms blinked into existence. Long, thin crafts previously cloaked beneath the Pacific, in mountain crevices, behind asteroid shadows. They weren't ships. They were knives. They bore no names, no flags, no blinking lights, just silence and inevitability. Each one locked onto a Zalari target. Each one launched. Hyperdense rounds, stealth-driven torpedoes, and nanite bombs surged toward the crippled fleet. Ships tried to move, but couldn't. AI systems looped. Pilots screamed as controls responded with delay, betrayal, or nothing at all. One by one, the pride of the galaxy shattered. The Emperor stared in disbelief as a section of his armada vanished in a silent pulse. "You animals," he whispered. Jack's voice came soft over the feed. "We don't start fights." Then Clara added, smiling, "But we sure as hell end them." The command ship shook. Interior alarms wailed. "Protect the Emperor," guards shouted. But no protection came. Their ship was last. The last to fall. In orbit, a final human drone craft hovered silently near the observation dome. Inside it, a bomb, disguised as a meteor fragment, detonated outward in a magnetic collapse. The divine will folded in on itself. Light blinked out. In the bunker, silence reigned. Then Clara exhaled. It worked. Jack nodded. Then he sat. His hands shook a little. Not from fear, but from weight. She touched his shoulder. "You okay?" He gave her a look, part grin, part ghost. "No, but I will be." Above, the stars shimmered again. Later that evening, Jack returned to his porch. The chair creaked. The dog lay beside him. The sky, for once, didn't seem hostile. Clara walked up the gravel path, holding 2 beers. She handed him one. "I don't like warm lemonade." He smiled. Noted. She sat beside him. They didn't speak for a long time, until she asked, "What now?" Jack looked to the horizon. "Now they'll remember. Us." He shook his head. "Earth." The stars twinkled like they'd been told something for the first time. Somewhere across the galaxy, whispers began. Not just of war, not just of loss, but of a farmer. A man in overalls who smiled before he struck, who drank lemonade and planted doom, who spoke in calm threats and buried empires under corn. They called him many names, but one would stick, the Yaga. And in 1,000 languages, on 10,000 worlds, the story spread like fire through dry grass. The galaxy had teeth, but Earth had roots. And deep below the quiet farms and prairie winds, those roots watched, waited, and remembered, forever.